This is not about me. This is about the woman you destroyed. Kody Brown's voice didn't simply speak. It cut through the thick air in the courtroom like ice fire knife. It was the sort of voice that made everyone in the room hold their breath. The judge's pen hung suspended above her pad, and the jury leaned in, drawn by the gravitational force of the words. And even the court stenographer glanced up from her keys. Meri sat mere feet away. Her hands, soft but calloused from years of labor and disappointment, shook in her lap. She wasn't accustomed to Kody standing up for her. In fact, she had grown accustomed to silence between them. A silence so heavy it was its own entity in the room whenever they were together. But today was different. Today Kody was not silent. He was here for her today. The atmosphere in the courtroom was charged. Not tense. Charged. As though everybody had an inkling something was going to take place that would forever alter the course of this trial. Kody slowly got up from his seat, the leather on his chair creaking. He wasn't sporting the flashy jackets or the showman grin the public used to know him by from television. This was not Sister Wives Kody. This was another version altogether. Bare, naked, and deadly. His gaze was fixed on the defendant, who sat smugly at the defense table. A family friend. Someone Meri had once invited into her house. Broken bread with, trusted as a brother. And now, the one who had almost ruined her life. They reclined in his chair, raising one eyebrow, lips twisting into a half-smirk. Their posture shouted confidence, arrogance, even as if all of this was just some game they were sure to come out on top in. Their smirk wavered though, when Kody began his approach toward the witness stand. Meri's mind was spinning. She had imagined this moment before, Kody standing up for her, but in her daydreams, it had been years earlier, before the wounds between them had deepened, before the coldness, before the silence. Now, here it was. And it felt almost surreal. Her eyes searched Kody's face. He did not look at her. Not yet. His eyes remained fixed on the individual who had betrayed her. The individual who had taken so much. The heaviness of what had occurred lay upon her chest. The betrayal was not merely about pilfered funds. It was more. This individual had stolen from her not only her trust, but also her reputation, her sense of security. They had cost her years of her life. Years she could never have back. The bailiff stepped out from behind the door. Journalists in the gallery scribbled furiously, feeling they were on the verge of getting their headline. Camera operators adjusted their lenses, framing the anxious triangle between Kody, Meri, and the defendant. The judge's voice overrode the mutterings. "Mr. Brown, you may proceed." Kody's jaw clenched. He paused. The word dangling there just long enough for everyone to tilt forward. "Is not about me." His gaze narrowed, his voice low and resonant. "This is about the woman you ruined." The words dropped with a force that seemed to suck the air out of the room. Even Meri's breath caught. The defendant shifted in their seat. Smirk erased now, replaced by a small twitch of the jaw. A tell. They weren't as at ease as they wished everyone to think. Kody went on, his tone firm. "For years I stood and watched her rebuild herself from the ruins you left behind. You thought you'd be able to get away with it. You believed no one would fight for her. You were wrong." The jury's eyes flicked between him and the accused, watching every nuance, every flash of expression. Some jurors leaned forward, hands folded on the desk. Others sat back, arms crossed, their faces unreadable. Meri felt heat rise in her chest, not from embarrassment, but from something she hadn't felt in years. The sensation of being defended, truly defended. For so long, she had been told to simply move on, to keep quiet about her pain, to not make a scene. But this was something different. This was loud. She recalls the first day she knew the betrayal had occurred. The bank account notifications. The angry supplier calls. The bewildered expressions from individuals she worked with for years. And then, the terrible moment when she put it all together. The falsified documents. The stolen money. The gossip that seemed to spread faster than she could catch her breath. The defendant had been clever about it. Perhaps too clever. They knew how to present themselves as innocent while casting Meri as unreliable, unstable, even dishonest. And now, here they were in court, believing they could talk their way out of responsibility. But Kody wasn't having it. Not today. He stepped closer to the stand, the wooden floorboards groaning beneath his boots. "Not only did you steal money," he stated, his tone becoming harsher. "You stole her serenity. You stole her reputation. You took the years she might have spent creating something beautiful and wasted them on fighting off lies." The defense attorney attempted to intervene, but the judge gestured for Kody to proceed. He addressed the jury directly. "Picture someone you trusted, someone you welcomed into your house, smiling at you during dinner, then stealing from you while you slept. Picture waking up and discovering your life destroyed, not by a stranger, but by a friend." That's what she endured. The room was still, with only the quiet tapping of the stenographer's keys. Meri dropped her gaze, one tear breaking free in spite of her attempts to stifle it. She did not need pity. She needed truth. And Kody was stripping it bare. She considered the distance they had grown apart over the years, the amount of moments lost to pride, hurt feelings, and unspoken words. And yet, here he stood, stepping between her and the man who had attempted to destroy her. She had no idea what this would do to them after today. But for now, none of it mattered. Kody held one final breath before sitting back down. "You have broken her trust," he told her softly, almost as a whisper to himself. "But you have not broken her spirit. And because of that, you will lose." He turned and at last faced Meri. For one fleeting moment, their eyes locked, a wordless understanding passing between them. It was done in an instant, but its effect could not be denied. The judge indicated for the trial to go on, but the atmosphere in the courtroom had changed. This was no longer simply a trial. This was a settling of accounts, and Kody Brown was going to make it so. The minute Kody took a seat, the prosecutors stood up from their seat, clutching a tidy pile of files. They strode in the direction of the jury box, their footsteps ringing out in the silence of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the prosecutor started, "you've just heard a man's rage. Now let me share with you the facts behind it." They pressed a tiny remote, and the courtroom screen flashed to life with a timeline. At the top, the betrayal, from start to finish. It all started 2 years before, when Meri was attempting to start her life anew after years of stress. She had dreams again, proper ones. She wished to build a business that wasn't solely for money, but something she might sink her heart into. Her strategy was straightforward, but zealous. Invest her savings in a small hospitality business, a warm and inviting bed and breakfast. It was not just a business, it was a fresh start. But dreams, the prosecutor claimed, make the perfect target for predators. The defendant, a longtime family friend to whom Meri had entrusted her business for years, intervened, promising to assist. They had experience, connections, and a charming smile. They promised her that under their guidance, her vision would become a reality quicker than she could have dreamed. Meri trusted them. The prosecutor showed the first piece of evidence, a signed partnership agreement. Meri's signature was genuine. The other, that was the defendant's, next to an extra clause they'd forgotten to mention, a clause giving them power over all bank transfers. It was the perfect setup. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Within 3 months, the prosecutor continued, funds began disappearing from the business account. It started small, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But over time it grew into tens of thousands. On the screen, the numbers grew like red warning lights, flashing amounts that made Meri's stomach twist even now. The betrayal didn't stop with stolen money. When Meri started inquiring, the defendant acted more quickly. They produced doctored documents that created the impression she had stolen the money herself. They spread rumors to mutual friends. They even called local media, feeding them rumors that portrayed Meri as reckless, desperate, even greedy. The rumors spread like wildfire. Meri ceased to return her calls. She stayed indoors. Those who had stood by her turned away when she entered a room. And meanwhile the defendant acted the role of the concerned friend in public, shaking their head in feigned sorrow, expressing to anyone who would listen how concerned they were about her. Kody listened carefully as the prosecutor recounted the tale. He remembered those months all too clearly. He had been bitter with Meri for years prior to this incident. They had their problems, lots of them. But even in his anger at her, he could recognize she didn't deserve this. She had toiled her entire life. She wasn't flawless, but she was not a crook. And when the defendant made the town turn against her, something within Kody broke. He didn't leap to her defense in public. Not initially. But behind the scenes he began to investigate. Quietly. And what he discovered set his blood boiling. The prosecutor waved up the next paper. A bank statement. This, they said, is the transfer history from Meri's account. They pointed to the highlighted lines. Large sums all sent to shell companies the defendant controlled. Then came the kicker. An email thread between the defendant and an unknown associate. In it, the defendant bragged about how easy it was to get away with the transfers, calling Meri too naive to notice until it's too late. Gasps swept through the courtroom. Even the judge's eyebrows rose. The prosecutor did not let up. They showed pictures. One of Meri smiling in front of the bed and breakfast in the early days, and one taken just 6 months later, her face pale, her smile erased, in front of a closed sign. Everything she lost. The prosecutor stated matter-of-factly. Meri swallowed hard. She felt eyes on her, but she didn't look up. She wasn't here to grovel for sympathy. She was here for justice. And with each bit of evidence that justice seemed nearer. But there was still one question hanging in the air. One the prosecutor knew the defense would seize on. Why was Kody so involved now? The answer was coming. But when it did, it would shake the courtroom even harder. The prosecutors shuffled their papers, glanced at the judge and said the words everyone had been waiting for. The prosecution calls Kody Brown. The room responded in an instant. Some of the jurors shifted uncomfortably. The defense attorney frantically scrawled something on a yellow legal pad. Journalists leaned forward so quickly their chairs groaned. Kody rose, adjusted his jacket, and proceeded toward the witness stand with the measured, deliberate pace of a man who'd already concluded what had to be said. As he was sworn in, his voice didn't break. Go ahead. As he sat down, the prosecutor nodded. Mr. Brown, you previously made a statement to the court. Now I want you to say something to the jury, in your own words, about why you're here today. Kody's eyes did not look at the prosecutor. They looked directly at the defendant. Think you know Meri's weakness? He started, his voice low and measured. You don't know her strength. The words hung in the air, poised between anger and determination. Kody then addressed the jury. His voice didn't tremble, but it had a coarse edge to it. The sort that comes from swallowing too much anger for too long. I watched her break, he stated. Not once, not twice, but time and time again because of what you did to her. I saw her cry at 3 in the morning when her bank account had been frozen and she couldn't pay her employees. I saw her struggle to tell her friends, people she's known for decades, that she wasn't the liar they were saying she was. And I saw her stop picking up the phone because she couldn't take hearing one more person question her. The prosecutor took him gently by the elbow. Did you believe these accusations against Meri? Kody's elbows rested on his knees, his hands together. Not for a moment, not a single moment. I've known Meri for more than 30 years. We've had our arguments, lots of them. But the woman I know isn't a thief. She's not greedy. If anything, she's too trusting. And somebody took advantage of that. He looked over at the defendant, who sat staring at the table, feigning notes. The prosecutor moved a step forward. Can you tell us the impact this had on your family? Kody clenched his jaw. It wasn't about money. It was shame. It was whispers behind her back. It was people staring at my kids differently because of lies that weren't even close to what the truth was. And that's what enraged me. You mess with me? No problem. But you ruin a person's life and smile like it's nothing. His voice cracked just slightly on the word destroy, and Meri's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. The defense attorney jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. This is personal opinion, not fact. The judge, without missing a beat, overruled. The witness may continue. Kody took a deep breath. I began investigating what was going on. Quietly. I did not inform Meri initially because I did not want to create false hope for her. I reviewed every bank statement, every invoice, every text message I could find, and what I discovered, he glared at the jury, allowing the tension to build, was evidence. Evidence that the defendant stole her money, forged her signature, and went around telling the world she did it. There was a buzz in the room. The bailiff ordered order. The prosecutor questioned, Mr. Brown, why did you choose to testify today? Kody's response was instant. Because I know who this individual is. And if they can do it to someone like Meri, someone strong, someone who is resilient, then they can do it to anyone. He leaned in over the microphone, still staring at the defendant, and I want to make sure they never get that opportunity again. The defense lawyer took a step forward to cross-examine him, obviously ready to rattle him. Mr. Brown, they asked with a hint of a smile, would you characterize your relationship with Meri as complicated? Kody didn't blink. Yes, complicated doesn't even begin to describe it. And yet, here you are, speaking out in her defense. Is it not possible that this is something else? Something about revenge? Kody's tone fell to a menacing calm. Revenge? No. This is about justice. If you equate the two, perhaps that tells us more about you than it does me. The jury was focused on him now. Even Meri, who had entered the courtroom with no idea what to expect, was holding her breath. Kody's testimony wasn't mere words. It was a turning point. And secretly everybody in that room was aware. The true fireworks would only begin. The prosecutor had concluded their series of questions. Kody left the witness stand, his testimony suspended in the air like an impending storm cloud that would not dissipate. Meri felt lighter, as if some of the burden she'd been carrying had been shifted onto Kody's shoulders. For the first time in many years, she thought, maybe it will turn out for me after all. But the defense lawyer wasn't finished. Not by a long way. They stood up from their chair slowly, smoothing out suit jacket, a small smile playing at the edges of their mouth. Your Honor, they announced. The defense would like to introduce new evidence. The judge lifted an eyebrow. Proceed. The defense attorney grabbed a thick manila folder and walked it to the clerk's desk. In here, they announced, are bank statements and transaction reports that the prosecution conveniently failed to present to you. Reports that establish Mr. Brown wasn't merely a bystander in this case. He was a participant. Gasps spread through the gallery. The prosecutor leapt from their chair. Objection, this is a frivolous allegation to divert attention from the facts. But the judge, intrigued, permitted it, overruled. Let's hear what the defense has. The defense lawyer distributed copies of the papers to the judge and jury. Ladies and gentlemen, they began. These bank records clearly show that Mr. Brown transferred funds, significant funds, from a shared family account directly into Meri's business account. The jurors leaned forward, scanning the highlighted lines. Kody's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what they were looking at. Yes, I sent money, he announced, loudly from his seat, unable to contain himself. And do you know why? Because by the time I discovered what he glared at the defendant, had done, Meri was drowning. That money did not get stolen. It was me attempting to rescue her before it was too late. The defense attorney jumped on it. Ah, but Mr. Brown, that wasn't your money to transfer, was it? That was other people's money, wasn't it, including your other relatives? There was a moment of hesitation. The pause was short but lethal. Yes, he confessed. But no further questions, Your Honor. The harm was irreparable. The defense lawyer returned to her seat with the smugness of a person who had just sown a seed of doubt in fertile ground. The prosecutor hurried to regain lost ground, calling for Meri to the stand immediately. She fidgeted, but she stood erect, adjusting the microphone. Meri, the prosecutor started softly. Can you clarify these transactions? She nodded. Kody didn't do anything for himself. He took that money and paid my employees. Paid the bills I couldn't pay because the defendant had drained my accounts. If it wasn't for him, the business would have failed months ago. That money saved me. The defense attorney leaned forward, poised to object, but the judge let her continue. And as for where the money came from, she caught her breath. Yes, it was from a joint account, but Kody explained to me that he would tell all the others, and that he'd accept full blame. I did not ask him to. He volunteered because he knew I couldn't battle alone. Her voice broke on the final word, and several jurors softened visibly. Still, the defense had done their job. The courtroom now buzzed with the possibility that Kody wasn't as clean in all this as he appeared. The prosecutor quickly wrapped up her testimony, but the tension in the room had shifted. Kody leaned toward Meri as she returned to her seat. We're fine, he whispered, though his eyes betrayed the storm brewing inside him. Meri nodded, but the tension remained. She knew the way courtrooms operated. It wasn't about whether the truth was on your side. If the opposing side provided the jury with some reason to question you, the truth could be overpowered. The judge declared a recess. Reporters scurried out of the courtroom to report developments. The jury exited, their faces inscrutable. And in the defense corner, the defendant smiled once more. the same condescending smile Meri had watched countless times. The war wasn't over, and if the next step didn't go right, Kody's battle for revenge might be one that cost them both everything. When the court resumed, the atmosphere was more intense than it had been earlier. The recess hadn't cooled tempers, it had sharpened them. The jury filed back in, blank faces, their pace slow and measured. Kody's heart thudded in his ears, though he kept his stance stiff, unwilling to let the defendant catch so much as a glimmer of fear. Meri, sitting next to him, had her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. She could hear the distant ticking of the courtroom clock, each second crawling across her chest like a burden. The judge slapped her gavel once. Has the jury arrived at a verdict? The foreperson rose, a piece of paper slightly shaking in their hand. Yes, Your Honor, they have. Reporters ceased typing, cameras refocused, and even the smirking defendant's grin appeared to stumble, just barely. The judge nodded. Please read it. The foreperson cleared their throat. State versus defendant's name. On the charge of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. A murmuration of sound erupted in the courtroom. Gasps, stifled cheers, the screech of chairs as people leaned forward. Meri's breath escaped her with a rush she hadn't known she was holding. The foreperson went on. On the charge of identity theft, guilty. The defendant's shoulders squared. And on the charge of defamation, guilty. The judge's voice cut through the din. This court sentences the defendant to 8 years in state prison and orders full financial restitution to the victim. The gavel slammed down with a loud crack. It was done. The bailiff approached the defense table, cuffs at the ready. The defendant glanced back at Kody and Meri as they were taken away. Their tone was low, but the venom was unmistakable. This isn't over. Kody's face remained unaltered. He just settled back into his chair and said, "Yes, it is." Meri shot around to face him, crying openly now. "You didn't have to do this," she breathed. "Yes, I did," Kody replied. "Because no one destroys you and gets away with it." The cameras saw everything. The two of them standing there together, walking out of the courtroom hand in hand. Outside, the sun shone down on them like a spotlight. Reporters were everywhere, microphones pushed forward, questions flying. Kody, was this about revenge? Meri, how do you feel about the verdict? Will this change your relationship moving forward? Kody raised a hand, shushing them all. This wasn't about revenge, he replied firmly. This was about justice. And today, justice prevailed. The crowd gasped and burst into applause. For an instant, Meri relaxed and smiled. Really smiled, not the pretend walk in wonder she had put on for years. The burden she had carried for so long was finally lifted. As they moved away, the sound of the reporters receded. The sun seemed warmer, the air seemed lighter, and for the first time in years, Meri hoped that maybe, just maybe, she could start anew.